Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to look at the coronavirus innovation rankings. It's going to start in 1 minute's time. While we're waiting to start, feel free to introduce yourselves on chat. Okay everyone, so let's get started. So we're here today to present insights on the top cities for COVID-19 innovation as part of the coronavirus innovation rankings that we have. Ahead of the launch of the report created in collaboration with the Health Innovation Exchange by the UNAIDS. So to give you a little background on StartupLink, a short overview. Ultimately, StartupLink is an ecosystem map and research center. We have tens of thousands of registered startups, co-working spaces and accelerators on our map. We also have annual reports that rank the startup ecosystems of more than 1,000 cities and 100 countries. And to give you a little bit of a background on the coronavirus innovation rankings, in April 2020, as the pandemic was rapidly spreading around the world, we decided that we could do our part by creating a map of innovations all over the world, working in different areas that have adapted solutions and forged alliances with the aim of defeating COVID-19 and its consequences. Now, the map is a visual global directory of more than 1,300 projects intended to facilitate global data flow of COVID-19 solutions and help innovators cooperate and collaborate. Just to show you a little bit of the map itself. As you can see here as a visual database, we also identified categories in coronavirus innovation, for example, in prevention, diagnostics, treatment, each with their own subcategories, grants and support initiatives, information, life and business adaptation, etc. Ultimately, the map is crowdsourced and also allows everyone to submit their projects to the map. And the map is also enhanced by data provided by various municipalities, governments and economic development corporations around the world. In 2020, this culminated in the COVID-19 Innovation Report, which showcases those rankings of the best countries and cities. And this year, we're also doing an updated report looking at 40 different countries and 100 cities. 40 different countries and 100 cities in terms of that COVID-19 innovation updated since then. And that will be the second edition, and that will be shared with you as soon as it is finished. It should be finished in the coming weeks. Just finalizing the last parts of it now. But today we're going to go over some of the insights from that 2021 report that will be released in a couple of weeks and talk a little bit more about that and get your questions about it. So to move on to looking at the insights from this report in itself. So first of all, to just the, excuse me, go back a little bit. So to start off with, talk a little bit about the regional analysis of the report itself. So looking at Europe, had some interesting insights from there, where it has the region with the second most cities in the rankings. Europe actually has a total of 24 different countries and 33 cities in the top 100, with Belgium, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom ranking 4th, 5th, and 6th. And that's actually not a change on last year, where they were also in 2020, they were also at 4th, 5th, and 6th. So that's Belgium at 4th, Switzerland at 5th, and the United Kingdom at 6th. However, in North America, we're looking at a total of 2 countries, Canada and the US, and 35 cities in total ranking in the top 100. 27 cities in the US and 8 in Canada as well. And the US ultimately has kept its place as the top ranked country since 2020. And Canada has also retained its spot at 3rd, despite its highest ranking city, Toronto, decreasing by 1 place from 4th to 5th in the overall city rankings. In the Asia Pacific region, we have a total of 8 countries and 16 cities ranking in the top 100, and the highest performing of which are from the tiger economies of South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore. And Singapore is actually ranked 1st in the region and 7th overall internationally. All 3 countries, so South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore, have made major progress in their responses to the pandemic. And South Korea has actually jumped by 10 spots in the overall rankings to land in the top 10, while Taiwan also has retained that position as the 14th strongest country when it comes to COVID-19 innovation. Looking over to the Middle East and Africa, we have a total of 6 countries, 10 cities ranking in the top 100. Israel, of course, now being one of the first countries to administer the vaccine also. It has taken the lead and ranks actually on a worldwide, global level, 2nd behind the USA. Both Kenya and South Africa also represent the region in the top 40 as well. And finally, at a regional level, 4 countries and 6 cities represent Latin America. And the Caribbean has actually made a significant contribution in response against the COVID-19 pandemic. Brazil, being one of the hardest hit countries in the region, ranks at 31st overall, while both Mexico and Colombia feature in the top 40 for the first time. So now to talk a little bit about the 10 countries that are at the top in terms of COVID-19 innovation, I'm going to invite my colleague Christos to come along and discuss.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Christos.
Hey guys, how you doing? So I'll be doing a rundown of the top 10 countries for innovation for COVID-19. As Josh said, number 1 is the USA, with the top city being San Francisco, the second top city being New York. Then we've got Boston in 4th place, Los Angeles in 7th, and Seattle in 13th. So San Francisco is known globally as the number 1 innovation hub, and they've maintained that place even for COVID. So that's interesting to see. Overwhelmingly, the US has been leading the innovation with around 24 champions. So we have champions down as innovations that are very key to combating the pandemic. And the USA was first last year as well, and they've managed to maintain that position. So they've done really well for the diagnostics category mainly, but they've also done really well for treatment. And one of the most notable innovations that we want to give credit to is the Johns Hopkins University's tracker which provides real-time tracking of all different data on the current fight against COVID-19. And moving on to number 2, we have Israel. Israel is done really, really well with two champions that are very strong. The top city in Israel is obviously the Tel Aviv area, and they've placed 6th. And then we've got Haifa at 40th and Jerusalem at 93. They've mainly done well in prevention, diagnostics, and treatment, but they also have some innovations in life and business adaptation and information. So then the main champion that we want to shout out to for Israel would definitely be Temi robots. So these are basically robots that have been deployed in hospitals in China, Japan, and also in the US. And it basically enables COVID-19 patients to consult with their doctors through automation. That's actually one of the main things we've seen through the COVID pandemic is innovations mainly based on automating things, which has been quite interesting to see. Number 3 is Canada, unsurprisingly, with Toronto in 5th place, Montreal 33rd, Vancouver 39th, and everything else. Kitchener-Waterloo 50th, Quebec City 51st. So they're quite higher up. So Toronto's done really, really well, mainly in Canada. And Canada is quite known in terms of its health tech hub. So we were expecting him to do well anyway in the innovation against COVID. And they rank 4th in the global ecosystem ranking, the StartupLink global ecosystem ranking. So 3rd in innovation on COVID and 4th in global ecosystem ranking. It makes sense to us. And the main champion that we wanna, well, actually Canada's only had one champion, which is the O2 Canada. And these are basically masks that help with the breathability and respirator. And that's like the main champion coming out of Canada. Number 4 is Belgium with Antwerp at 17th, Brussels 42nd, Ghent 52, and Leuven on the 68th. And their main innovations have been in diagnostics. But Belgium was very badly hit by COVID-19 pandemic. And it seems one of the trends in our report is that places that were more hit have come out with more innovations, which is actually very interesting to see. We currently don't have any champions for Belgium, but we applaud the ability of the country to bounce back from how badly hit they were. And then we have Switzerland. So Switzerland, in terms of city rankings, we have Zurich at 20th, Basel at 35th, Geneva at 88th. And Switzerland's done well in information mainly, with 2 champions. So the main champion that we want to talk about, so the most notable one, is Novartis, which is actually trialing hydrochloroquine. I think that's how you say it, hydrochloroquine, which is actually a treatment for COVID-19 patients, is being used actually all around the world as treatment for some of the symptoms. So next up, we've got the United Kingdom. So the UK has London as 11th and Edinburgh as 82nd. So there's quite a big difference between the two. Most of the innovation in the UK happens in London anyway. So we're unsurprised to see that London is 11th, although we are surprised to see that London isn't in the top 10th as a city. And the main innovations that they have had is been in grants and support initiatives and life and business adaptations. Although, of course, we all know that they came out with a vaccine, the AstraZeneca, which is the champion. And it's one of the leading commercial available vaccines, obviously. Moving on from the UK, we have Singapore. So Singapore City is ranked 16th. And I think Singapore might be the country in the world that has the least deaths per capita, with their main innovations being diagnostics and information and prevention. They have no champions. However, they have done really, really well against coronavirus as a government, as a nation. And that's why they made it so high up in the list. Next up, we have Spain. So Spain, the main two cities in Spain are Barcelona and Madrid that have done well in the rankings. Barcelona has come out 12th and Madrid has come out 27th. And the main innovations have been in diagnostics. So Spain was another country very badly hit by the pandemic. But obviously they've done quite well with one really strong champion, Grifolis, which has accelerated the development of diagnostics and screening tests for the detection of COVID-19. So like I said before, Spain is mainly focused on diagnostic innovations. They have around 13 really strong innovations in diagnostics and 10 in life and business adaptation, which just goes to show like what different countries prioritize. Next up, we have South Korea as number 9. So Seoul is 8th, and another city called Daejeon is 31st, which is actually really interesting to see in the South Korean ecosystem that there's another city in the rankings other than Seoul, even making top 50, which is really impressive. Their main has also been, like Spain, diagnostics. South Korea has done really, really well through finding technological innovations to combat the coronavirus. And they have innovations such as Corona Board, which is basically kind of like the US's Johns Hopkins University, a tracker for all sorts of stats on the corona pandemic. And also another initiative which is interesting is Classum, which is basically a premium, like they allow educators to allow premium services for telecommunication for education. So the Koreans have done really well for finding ways around the pandemic and continuing business as usual. And finally, in 10th place, we have Luxembourg, which is really surprising for us considering what a small country it is. So Luxembourg City actually ranks 96th, but Luxembourg as a country has done really, really well. And yeah, they've got lots of different initiatives, including No Corona, which is an app that helps monitor proximity of people infected with coronavirus. So for example, if you're infected or if you pass by someone who is infected, you will know immediately, although a lot of people have this sort of innovation in a lot of different countries. And also VoiceMed, which is another, it's another innovation which basically tells you whether, it basically tells you if you're infected by COVID-19 simply from speaking to your phone. So that's another very interesting innovation. So that's the top 10, guys. Top 10 countries for innovation. I'll pass it over to my colleague Katrin, who will go over the key insights.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you again for joining our webinar. For those that just joined, as Josh said a while ago, the report will be released in a couple of days. And once it's released, we will send over an email to everyone that registered so you can download the report as well for your reference. Yeah, so just going over the key insights for the country. So the first insight, of course, like Christos mentioned, the first three countries are United States, Israel, and Canada. This is comparable to what we see in our global report and also the same as our previous report. So it shows that these three countries have really been leading the way in innovation, whether it's in a vertical such as the COVID-19 innovation or in general when it comes to startup ecosystems. Aside from these countries, we do see great great countries in the in Asia, such as Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan being ranked 7th, 9th, and 14th place. It shows that although we do see that the top 20 is primarily populated by either North American or European countries, there are Asian countries that are also overperforming in this vertical as well. And as Christos and Josh mentioned a while ago, these countries are actually the ones that have been um, in a way unscathed by the virus. We see that in Taiwan and Singapore, there are not as many cases as what we see here in Europe. And this really shows in the number of innovations and initiatives that they have to prevent COVID and also raise awareness on the effects of COVID-19. And so this year, we're extending the countries from the 32 countries that we released the report on last year. This year, it's 40 countries. And with this increase, we did see great debuts in countries such as Luxembourg, which is at 10th place, Norway at 25th, Austria at 27th, Hungary, Czech Republic at 33rd. Uganda at 36, and Mexico and Colombia at 39th and 40th, respectively. So it's great to see that it's not just cities that are countries in the West are really improving and really overperforming in this vertical, but we see African and also South American countries that are in the top 40, which is harder to go into compared to our global rankings, wherein we rank 100 countries, because here we only rank 40. And as Christos mentioned a while ago, Luxembourg actually is the highest debut that we had this year at 10th place. Last year, they weren't ranked at all. And just to expound a bit on why Luxembourg is more highly ranked than its city, it's because on the country level, we do have a buffer for population. And since Luxembourg is a small country, it has more innovation per capita than other countries on the list. Yeah, so let's move on to the city insights. So this year, for this updated report, we're releasing, we're featuring 100 cities compared to the 80 cities that we featured in the previous report. So the first, of course, the top two is still San Francisco, and then the second on this rankings is New York, which is a good surprise. Usually we think of New York as a fintech capital, but it shows that they're also overperforming in COVID, despite being one of the most badly hit cities in the world, same as in San Francisco. And the third city is Moscow on the rankings. So Moscow also produced a vaccine, and that accounts for its huge increase from the previous report. Other great performances that we saw on the cities are Seoul at 8th place, Taipei at 9th, and Singapore City at 16th place. Similar to their country rankings, we really see great innovation from these Asian cities, and they're really paving the way in the region in terms of innovating on COVID-19. We also saw that they were the trailblazers in a lot of not just innovations, but also initiatives and policies for the government on how to manage COVID-19, manage the spread of COVID-19. In terms of other regions, such as South America, we saw that the leading cities were Brasilia at 69th, Recife at 70th, and also Sao Paulo at 74th place. And then in Africa, we also saw great innovation with Lagos increasing 14 spots from its place last year, being the highest ranked African city at 34th. And Johannesburg is also at 36th place. So it's a really pleasant surprise for us to see great innovation and a lot of innovation coming from African cities, wherein most of the time they do sometimes appear lower in the rankings in other lists, such as our Global Innovation Report. So other debuts for the countries this year are Copenhagen at 40th, Brisbane at 48th, Baltimore at 63rd, Melbourne at 75th, Malmo at 76th, Vilnius at 95th, Cali at 98th, and Kingston in Canada at 86th. So this year on our report, we didn't just focus on the cities and on their rankings. We also looked at how categories have shaped since the last report. This is a good way for us to gauge on how innovation has been shifting from before being just, we were all shocked. We didn't know how to innovate. So everyone was on almost survival mode. But we do see that this, with this rankings, the updated rankings, that there's more focus on really solving the issue by prevention and more medically focused innovations. So since the last report in July 2020, we saw a 25 increase in the number of innovations on the coronavirus innovation map. The top 3 categories in terms of numbers are diagnostics, prevention, and treatment. Being diagnostics and prevention having the biggest increase, with diagnostics increasing by 102 innovations from the last report, and prevention gaining 60 more innovations on this report as well. So as I mentioned, this really shows that there's less focus on adaptation and grants and initiatives, but really now a lot of innovators are focusing on how to solve the issue and how to, for us all to go back to how we were before the pandemic started. So the big increase in prevention can also be due to more vaccines being commercially available at the moment. So now we have 6 vaccines listed on our map: AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, Sputnik. We also have, of course, Johnson & Johnson's vaccine, and the Moderna vaccine, and the Pfizer vaccine. Yeah, so that's all for the category section. Now we will open the floor for Q&A for everyone that's listening at the moment. So if you have any questions about the report, the methodology, please feel free to put it on the chat or on the Q&A button below.
While we're waiting for a question, Katrin, I thought I might ask you a question as someone who's ultimately managed this project. What has been of all the innovations that you've come across, which one has been one that's really stuck out to you?
So maybe I won't choose a particular one just to be fair, but it's been very interesting to see how much innovation there has been in terms of test kits. There's a lot of test kits now that are not the same way that we had before. Before it was very complicated, but now there's a lot of just using saliva. I don't know if anyone else has been tested for COVID. It's not a very pleasant experience. So having that alternative of just getting the saliva instead of the nasopharyngeal test, it's really great, because the innovators are really solving an issue as they go. And considering that it's only been a year really since this pandemic started, the changes and the initiatives on the test kits itself has been astounding. And there's a lot of rapid test kits now, and a lot of them are also just locally produced. So even in smaller countries, they don't import anymore. There are local companies that are producing them themselves.
Yes,
so
it's incredible. I've had a COVID test before, and it's certainly not a comfortable experience at all.
So maybe maybe just a last question for you, Josh. Like in terms of the regions, what's the most surprising for you? Because I know that you were very focused on the regional aspect of the report.
Yeah, well, one of the most interesting aspects is for example, in the Middle East and Africa, seeing both Kenya and South Africa in the top 40. It's really nice to see that. And also, what's been interesting also is to see Brazil, one of the hardest hit regions as well, really perform well in that and actually come 31st. So 31st and within regionally be the leading city in Latin America as well. So that's really good to see as well. Okay, well, so I think we'll wrap up. It's great to have this webinar talk about the coronavirus rankings. Ultimately, they celebrate the countries and cities that went above and beyond during the crisis, producing some inspiring projects to benefit the local community and develop solutions that have actually had an impact around the world and gone outside of maybe the domestic area in which they were created. And ultimately, I think at StartupLink, I think that once the pandemic is over, the COVID-19 map should be a valuable information resource to help overcome future challenges relating to disease prevention, diagnosis and treatment as well. So hopefully we can continue using this for future projects. Hopefully there won't be another pandemic, but hopefully we'll be able to use technology and these innovations that we created in the future as well. So it's great. Well, thank you very much again. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will, as soon as the 2021 version is available, we will send that over to everyone who signed up for the event. And of course, if you have any questions at all, please email feedback@startuplink.com, and you can also get us on Twitter @StartupLink. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.